Hey guys, this is part 3 of our InWin Mod III build. In this build, we're going to expand on what we've already done. And as a quick recap, what we've got so far is the SFX build of the InWin Mod III, which uses the bigger of the panels, which is the version 3, which is the full-size panel, with B650 motherboard from MSI and AMD 7900 non-X CPU. In this particular case, the way it's set up right now, we can't actually fit a graphics card or any significant cooler. The only thing we can do is put a fan or 120mm radiator, and we do have a full-size power supply. For more, check out our previous video to get into the details of what we've done. What we will do in this video is expand on that. We'll start with upgrading the graphics card first. Well, installing one, because there isn't one at all in there. We'll use the ModFree-3 case, which is the larger chassis, and we'll also need to use the GPU mount, which comes separately. To top it all off, you also need to buy a PCIe bracket. Will be PCIe Gen 3, 4, or soon to be 5. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. Next, we need to figure out how we're going to mount this graphics card. The graphics card we're using here is actually one from ZOTAC. This is a 4080 Super. It's a pretty beast of a card, and it is a big card, but I think the case is a little bit bigger, so I think we're okay. So I'm going to take away the fan mount or the radiator mount, depending on what you will use it for, because it's just in the way right now and it's obstructing some of the screw holes. The one thing that is not particularly clear inside the app is, while you can see that the GPU bracket needs to go around here somewhere, it's not exactly clear which screw hole it aligns with. Do you need to install it on the inside of the frame or on the outside? So you could do it on the outside or the inside, but I feel if it's the most tight when you go on the inside. Then if you align this bottom hole here, this side seems to align, and this screw here aligns as well. And if we flip it over, I feel this one aligns, as well as this one here. So I'm going to give it a go and try to install it now. 5 screws later, the GPU bracket seems to be in place. And it seems to be straight-ish. Now we need to install the PC riser cable, and we got one from Techwear, and they actually call this the flex cable, and I think that's something that we're going to need. The reason that we're going to need that is because when we install the graphics card on the side here, if we look in this case right now, the PCIe slot is in a, well, currently a horizontal way. Once we install the graphics card in here, this will be vertical. And it's also going to be probably behind on the other side. So I need to have the graphics card basically pointing like this here. So I need the cable to come out from this, come out, and then go and connect sideways. So I need a full twist like this. So I'm hoping that this 20cm cable from Techwear is going to do the trick. It's supposed to be flexible, that's what it's designed to be, so let's give it a go. Unfortunately, the riser cable we had didn't quite fit our case. So we picked up another one which does fit, but also is a bit shorter. So we have limitations. What we had to do, we've actually had to move the riser bracket down, which still fits a full-size graphics card. So this graphics card, if you look at it, will still fit here, and there'll still be a little bit of space at the bottom. But anything longer, you might have trouble. Then we can install this whole section with the graphics card on the side of the case, just here. It actually leaves this gap open for fresher air to go and hit our CPU cooler, which is nice. The one caveat here is if we install a graphics card here, right now the fan at the bottom will blow the air into the back of the power supply. So what you might want to do if you have a blow-through card like this, like most 40 series, you might want to take the power supply and actually flip it around so it's sucking in that air and blowing it out from the case. But it's up to you realistically. With the way that we install it here, if we install the graphics card right now, there'll be a bit of a gap between the graphics card and the power supply for the air to dissipate, so that's not too much of a problem. I would have liked to install this on the other side, so installing it on this end. But for that to work, you would need to use a slightly longer PCIe expansion cable, and you just need to kind of plug it in here. Currently, if I plug it in, my frame does not line up. So that's where the problem stands. So bear that in mind, because that's going to be an important part of your build. Anything in here requires a longer, preferably about 20 centimeter long PCIe expansion cable. We'll install the graphics card and start mounting the case side by side. So for the graphics card, what we did is we mounted it in a, let's just call it DIY fashion. Our brackets don't quite fit, but we're able to secure the graphics card mostly to the frame, and we've installed the cable. So we can actually still install the cable into the motherboard. So that should be okay for the time being, but generally speaking, we would need a different PCIe riser to make it fit better. That's something to consider, and that's definitely a bit of a problem with this build. It's a good thing that I have this problem, so maybe you won't. Next, I want to expand the bottom chassis and install this on the side. So let's just move this out of the way and get the additional parts. For the expansion of the frame, or the base of the frame, what you need to do is just take off the existing base, and you need to kind of disassemble it. Take it apart. Now, what we're doing in between, we're adding in one of these sections, and we're going to add one more. So now, what we can do, we can screw together two of these units. And the way that they work is then you can slide the actual frames onto them. So let's put these to the side first and screw this all together into one solid piece. So we got the base in place and just kind of drop the frame in, secure it in place. And this one, by default, it doesn't come with a little screw inside, so that needs to be installed. And then what you do, you basically take it and you install it the same way. And it just sits there, nice and flush. It also comes with a little rubbers that goes in between. So you put these in between the two cases at the top when you screw them together. So otherwise, when you have vibrations, you're gonna have this kind of situation. But with the rubbers in place, even if you have vibrations, it's not gonna do any noise. That's something that's very important to note. So this screw goes into the top of the case. Well, the bottom of the case, I'm using it at the top. It goes into the end of the case, as well as on the sides. And then, when you install it to the other side, it goes into these little grooves. So essentially, the little screw goes in and secures the case in place, so it doesn't fall off. Once you've decided which way your components go, so in my case, they go this way and down, now you can install them here and have them connect. And you can carry on doing that as many times as you like, because this has an end on it for connections. And on this side, you can have them for screwing. And you can actually see there on the panel, on the frame, it's labeled as a little T. Now the T junctions are installed, we can throw it on in both sides and secure it. It's nice and solid now. But what we need to do is make sure that all our connections are in the right place, and the frame just got way more heavy. What I need to do now is plug in the power supply. And this is where I love the new connectors. This is a simple cable for the graphics card, and it's gonna be very easy to route. Make sure it clicks in, nice and solid. Since this case has loads of space, we can hide the cables a bit later. I'll go over this end. Plug into our hanging graphics card. Now the cable is in, and we've almost not taken up any space with the cabling at all. This is kind of horrible, so what we do, panel on. Out of sight, out of mind. And that's how you set up the system with the graphics card. So essentially, we have a hanging graphics card here. We still have airflow going to the cooler. There is clearly still a gap between the graphics card and the power supply, so the air can go around this area. And you can improve airflow in here, generally by reshuffling things how they are right now. I think changing power supply's orientation, just flipping it 180 degrees, so the air that comes through from this end goes through the card, gets sucked in by the power supply, and exhausted from this from the back. At the same time, the air that comes in through here gets exhausted through the back and kind of outwards, which is very convenient. We're now going to close this up, test thermals, and move on to the cooler upgrade. With the current setup tests complete, I can say that the CPU is a bit of a hot box right now. It gets hot and it definitely throttles down. The graphics card on the other hand kind of manages okay. So what we'll do next is install a separate CPU cooler to basically offload the heat from the middle of the case to the side to hopefully address those issues. At the same time, we'll experiment with a smaller frame and show you guys how that works and how you have blanking plates and whatnot. So let's get into it. I actually need to disassemble the whole thing because I need to take modules apart. For the CPU cooler, because it's mounted on this end, I need to install it from this angle. Let's skip over the assembly part and get straight to building the cooler. We've taken everything apart and we're doing a quick test fit. The cooler we want to use is the Hyte Q60. One of the main reasons I want to use it is because it's an unusual size. And as well as that, it has this screen on it, which, to be honest, in a closed case like this, doesn't really matter, but it'll be another challenge. The initial bit we have, fitting inside the case, check. It would actually fit inside the chassis, no problem. The pipes will stick out, but we have space here. We should be able to get them in. The next bit is, this is only designed to be mounted in a vertical orientation rather than horizontal. So that means it'll also be sticking out because we can move it left and right a bit, and it does make it a bit more narrow, but from here to here, it seems to be a bit more than what we actually have inside the chassis here. So even if we installed it inside the case, from this angle, it would be sticking out a bit. But if you remember from the graphics card part, we actually have a hole below, well, above really, but we have everything upside down right now. So for the graphics card side, we have this great big hole, which if you look at it, is exactly the right size. So what we're going to try to do is take out the cooler and install this cooler in its place and see if we can actually make all these sections fit together. This, I thought the graphics card was hard. I think I just upped the level and the level now is a bit insane. So let's take it apart and see what we can do. We started mounting the cooler and we got this far. The cold plate is installed. The screen, as mentioned before, is sticking out a little bit. And there's just no way to fit this inside the case. So you can see it's like a little bit out. But the proof of concept is probably okay because these tubes can fit inside here. So we can easily mount this now inside the frame. That will sit around here and the tubes can be wiggled around in this area. So that's okay. The next bit is the graphics card part, which needs to sit here. It also needs to reach with a PC connection, and this needs to join together. So let me give that a go. What I'll do to give myself a bit more space, I can pull this out, so that's not needed in here right now. I also need to be very mindful now because once I plug this all in, I can't really add or remove anything else because there's so much inside. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the RAM back in. I'm going to plug in all the cables. The cables are in, and thus far the whole of this build is probably more difficult than the fractal water cooling build that we did a little while back. Actually, I'd probably say this is way more difficult because none of this is in the manual because nobody's ever made it like this. I feel both uniquely impressed and also terrified. So, hey, we'll see how it goes. Right. Cables are in. The tubes need to come out. I need to get this in. These two interconnected with the little T-junctions that we discussed before. That's interconnected. And the screen is in. It fits. This actually fits. It has a little bit of movement that you can do. So now we have the graphics card and the screen on the same side. So we could read out temperatures while we're opening the side panel. So maybe not the most practical, but I think it's really, really cool. Now I need to get this cooler inside a case. For this bit, because I wasn't sure if it's going to work or not, I didn't even install this yet properly. So what we're going to do now is, this is kind of interesting. This chassis allows you to take off the back panel for the cooler. And now what we can do is we can use this to install the radiator and then install that back inside. It just makes it easier to work with. Especially if the things are now kind of sealed or kind of seated in the right places. So we have even more limited amount of space and movement that we can do. This radiator is just ridiculous. On this frame, the hooks are actually on both sides, so it's not a big deal. On this side, you can only install the T-junctions, the little T's. There's no hooks, except for the top and bottom. So be mindful of that, because you might want to decide which side to use. The little bracket is on. Now let's install it inside the actual case. The color scheme is matching across the board, white and black, so it's a bit of a stormtrooper with the wooden accent on the outside. Honestly speaking, the whole of this build, we made it needlessly complicated by using the most ridiculous components that we can. But that's what this kind of build is interesting for. You can make an easy build where you don't have a screen sticking out, or you buy the right PCIe riser. But at the same time, I think this is a good way of benchmarking this case system. It's not really a case, it's a system, to see how far can you actually push it. First of all, this needs to go here. Nope, that won't go here. We already have a problem here because these pipes are interfering. I need to mount this cooler lower. Let me see if I can adjust it. Just by lowering a bit on the screws that mount for the radiator. Ta-da! It fits. I didn't doubt it for even one moment. Not even one moment. It was meant to be. The whole thing was meant to be. This is cool. To be honest, still lots of space in the middle. So the Hyte cooler comes with this really cool USB-C connector on one side, and then it needs power, USB, and fan connection. The fan connection and USB needs to go onto the motherboard. And obviously the power just goes, it's just PCIe power, so that's easy. We can do that on the side. I forgot about this. One short / very long eternity later, we've made a few changes. We've flipped the case over, we've installed the cooler. When we were trying to install the cooler, we realized that the cooler would be obstructing the power supply. So we had to disassemble the whole system, reassemble it back, flip the power supply, get the cabling in place, realize that some of the cabling needs to be replugged and rerouted. Undid some bits, redid some bits, and here we are now. So we have now converted the case and it's now upside down. So the graphics card is basically no longer hanging, but rather standing. The screen, which is going to be hidden anyway behind the panel, is now below. But at the same time, we have everything fitted and in place. It all fits just right. With a little bit of wiggling around it, we were able to secure everything in place. And there's still quite a bit of space for cable routing, to be honest. So we can put the things in place. And now we can show you this other side of the case, where the cooler fits in. And if you look at the pipes in between here, they just get in for the CPU, which is kind of hilarious, but also kind of beautiful. In some ways, I feel that this cooler was basically designed for this case. Obviously it wasn't, but if you think about it, it's basically got its own third of the case, and it fits very nicely. The best part about it is previously all of our heat was concentrated kind of in the middle. Now we're going to be offloading that heat to this radiator on the side of the case. Therefore, both the CPU and the graphics card are kind of on the opposite sides. So all the heat is going to be doing this, or the cooling is going to be doing this. And now that the graphics card is pulling fresh air from the outside and outputting dirty air or warm air out through the back, it's going to be pushing into the power supply, which can handle it, and the power supply will be throwing it out the back. So in terms of air circulation, this is a far better setup, which is what we were heading to in the first place, but it was a bit of a journey to get there. I'm going to close up all the panels, and I want to show you how these smaller parts get covered, because it's actually kind of cool, but at the same time it's actually kind of simple. We've got the case back onto the platform, and all we had to do was just, again, separate the platform, add an extra layer in, and close it all up. So same process, it literally just adds up, and you can expand this as far as you like, which we might do in the next video. One of the ideas that we have is having one or maybe even two of these larger, maybe smaller units full of drives. We have drive cages for that, so that might be an interesting one. Now, let me close this off and see how it looks like when it's fully assembled. The usual tops. Got a bunch of them. There's two here. I think I might need one more. For the back, we have this one, which is going to be used for the graphics card. So just get the cable out. And now that the graphics card is down, okay, should have a cable coming out of the back here. This is what the side panel looks like for the shorter one. Basically the same as the big one, but just shorter. And what happens is you kind of get this hole where you have the top and side open. So you have these little blanking plates. And it even has a little square here, which lines up with the square up top. And they have magnets on the side. So you basically go in, click in, and it hides everything that you might want to hide. For the top, we've got the same little cover. This is actually not the same. The top and the bottom is different. What you'll find is we've installed this frame upside down because we've inverted the whole case upside down. And the reason why this one is upside down is to kind of hook onto the little T-junctions. But what happens is with these ones, the top and bottom accepts these little blanking plates very nicely. This one has a separate bracket on the bottom here, which can be used for power supply. So this actually has a power supply mounting. But because of that, we can't install one of these original nice blanking plates. So for now, we're going to use this, and we might just need to change the build up a bit in the next video. So it's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. Let's close up the rest. Oh no, the logo is inverted too. I'm sorry, InWin. Oh well. InWin. Clearly, we've not completed the case to the best possible outcome. What we're going to do now is we're going to test out the temperatures and see how it delivers in terms of general overall raw performance. Maybe just hide that. Better, right? Much better. Let me check out the results, and what we'll do is we'll do a summary video after this, explaining the pros and cons, our overall experience with it, and also go through all the testing results, starting with the SFF build, adding in the graphics card, and then adding in a separate section for the cooler. We'll also check through what we could have done better. For example, not having things upside down or covered up. It would look way better if this panel was here properly, but at the moment cannot. We'll go through that and we'll get back to you in the next video. In the meantime, give us some comments below in terms of what you think we should do with it, what we should include or maybe remove, and what we could have done better. We'll see you guys next time.